Rebecca Walsh found the human tooth in her garden soil while planting tomatoes. It was a molar, perfectly preserved, with a gold filling that caught the morning sunlight like a warning. She dropped her trowel and stumbled backward, her heart hammering against her ribs as she stared at the small, yellowed object nestled among the dark earth. Rebecca had been a dental hygienist for 12 years. She knew human teeth when she saw them. What she didn't understand was how one had ended up buried in the backyard of her suburban dream home. The house had been a fresh start after her messy divorce from Tom. 6 months ago, she had moved into the quiet neighborhood of Maple Grove, desperate to rebuild her life somewhere peaceful and predictable. The neighbors had been welcoming, especially Mr. Hendricks next door, who always offered to help with yard work and brought her homemade cookies every Sunday. Rebecca wrapped the tooth in a paper towel, her hands trembling as she tried to rationalize what she had found. Maybe the previous owner had lost a tooth, and somehow it had gotten buried. Maybe a pet had brought it from somewhere else. But even as she formed these explanations, her professional knowledge told her something different. The root structure was intact, which meant this tooth had been extracted recently, and the lack of decay suggested it hadn't been in the ground very long. She called the police, her voice shaking as she explained the discovery to the dispatcher. Officer Martinez arrived within 20 minutes, a kind-faced woman who examined the tooth with the same professional detachment Rebecca used when treating patients. "Ma'am, I'll need to have this analyzed, but I have to ask, have you noticed anything unusual in the neighborhood? Any strange smells, disturbed earth, anything that might seem out of place?" Rebecca thought about the past few weeks. There had been construction noises coming from Mr. Hendricks' basement, but he had mentioned he was renovating his workshop. The occasional chemical smell she had attributed to his painting projects. Nothing that had seemed particularly suspicious at the time. "My neighbor has been doing some renovation work, but that's normal, right?" Officer Martinez made notes in her pad. Which neighbor would that be? William Hendricks. He lives right next door in the blue house. He's been very helpful since I moved in. Something flickered across the officer's expression, too quick to interpret. Mr. Hendricks. How well do you know him? Not very well, I suppose. He seems nice enough. Quiet, keeps to himself mostly, but always friendly when we talk over the fence. Rebecca paused, remembering something. Actually, he mentioned he used to be a dentist before he retired. Maybe that explains the tooth somehow? Officer Martinez's pen stopped moving. He told you he was a dentist? Yes, we bonded over it since I work in dental care too. Why? Is something wrong? The officer closed her notepad and looked directly at Rebecca. Ma'am, I need you to be very careful around Mr. Hendricks. Don't go near his property, and if he approaches you, be polite, but keep your distance. Can you do that for me? Rebecca felt a chill run down her spine. You know him, don't you? I can't discuss an ongoing investigation, but I want you to call me immediately if you notice anything unusual. Day or night. Officer Martinez handed her a card with her direct number. Do you have somewhere else you can stay for a few days? I don't understand. What kind of investigation? Ma'am, please. Just be careful and consider staying elsewhere until we can look into this further. After the officer left, Rebecca sat in her kitchen staring at the business card. The house that had represented her fresh start suddenly felt like a prison. Every creak of the old wood, every shadow moving past her windows, every sound from next door made her jump. That evening, she watched through her bedroom curtains as lights moved around in Hendrik's basement windows. The glow was different than usual, brighter, more focused, like work lights instead of regular lamps. She could see his silhouette moving back and forth, carrying what looked like large, heavy objects. Around midnight, she heard his car start. Rebecca peered through the curtains and saw him loading something wrapped in plastic sheeting into his trunk. Her blood ran cold as she realized the bundle was roughly the size and shape of a person. She grabbed her phone to call Officer Martinez, but before she could dial, she heard a soft knock at her back door. Rebecca froze, hardly breathing, as the knocking repeated, gentle but persistent. "Rebecca?" Hendrik's voice called softly through the door. "I saw your lights on. Are you all right?" "I thought I heard someone upset earlier." Rebecca's hands shook as she gripped her phone. He had seen the police car. He knew she had found something. The knocking stopped, but she could hear him moving around her back porch, testing the door handle, checking the windows. "Rebecca, I know you're awake. We should talk." His voice was different now, still calm, but with an undertone that made her skin crawl. This wasn't the friendly neighbor who brought her cookies. This was someone else entirely. Rebecca quickly dialed 911, whispering into the phone as she described her situation. The dispatcher assured her that units were being dispatched, but they were at least 15 minutes away. "Rebecca," Hendrik's voice was now coming from her front door. "I really think we need to have a conversation about what you found today. It would be so much easier if you just let me in." She could hear him trying different windows, systematically testing each one to see if any were unlocked. Rebecca realized with growing terror that she had left the kitchen window open earlier to air out cooking smells. The sound of the window sliding open echoed through her house like a death sentence. Rebecca ran upstairs to her bedroom and locked the door, knowing it wouldn't stop him, but hoping it might buy her precious time. She could hear him moving through her house below, his footsteps deliberate and unhurried. "Rebecca, there's no need to make this difficult. I've always liked you. You remind me of someone I used to know." His voice was getting closer, moving up the stairs with the patience of someone who knew his prey had nowhere left to run. Rebecca pressed herself against her bedroom wall, listening to Hendrik's footsteps pause outside her door. In the silence, she could hear him breathing, calm, measured, like he was savoring the moment. "I know you're frightened, Rebecca, but there's really no need to be. I've been watching you for months, and you're nothing like the others. You're special." The others. Rebecca's blood turned to ice as she realized she wasn't his first victim. Officer Martinez's reaction suddenly made sense. Hendricks wasn't just a suspect in an investigation. He was a serial killer, and she had been living next door to him for 6 months. Her phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. Police are 12 minutes away. Too long, back window, now. Rebecca stared at the message, her mind racing. Someone was trying to help her, but who? And how did they know about the police response time? Another text. Don't think. Move. He has keys to every house on this street. Keys to every house. Rebecca remembered how helpful Hendricks had been when she moved in, offering to hold her spare key, recommending the local locksmith who had installed her security system. The locksmith who might have been working with him all along. The doorknob to her bedroom began to turn slowly. Rebecca didn't hesitate. She ran to her back window, the one that faced away from Hendricks' house, and pushed it open. The drop to the ground was about 12 feet, enough to hurt but not kill her. She could hear her bedroom door opening as she swung her legs over the windowsill. "Rebecca, please don't do anything rash. We have so much to discuss." She jumped, landing hard on the grass and rolling to absorb the impact. Pain shot through her ankle, but adrenaline kept her moving. She limped toward the street, looking desperately for the source of the mysterious text messages. A car door opened across the street, and a woman stepped out, Officer Martinez, but she was off duty, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her uniform. "This way, quickly," Martinez called, waving Rebecca toward her car. Rebecca hobbled across the street as fast as her injured ankle would allow. Behind her, she could see Hendricks' silhouette in her bedroom window, watching but not pursuing. Why wasn't he chasing her? "Get in," Martinez said, already starting the engine. "We need to get you somewhere safe while my team processes the scene." As they drove away from Maple Grove, Rebecca finally felt like she could breathe again. "How did you know to come back? How did you know he was in my house?" Martinez glanced in the rearview mirror, checking to see if they were being followed. "Because we've been watching William Hendricks for 3 years, and you finding that tooth was the first real evidence we've had against him. 3 years? How many people has he killed?" "We think at least 8, maybe more. All women, all new to the neighborhood, all living alone." Martinez's voice was grim. "He has a pattern. He befriends them, gains their trust, learns their routines. Then he strikes when they're most vulnerable." Rebecca thought about all the conversations she'd had with Hendricks over the fence, how he'd asked about her work schedule, her family, whether she was dating anyone. He hadn't been making small talk. He'd been gathering intelligence. "Why haven't you arrested him?" "Because he's incredibly careful. Never leaves physical evidence at the crime scenes, always has alibis, always makes it look like his victims simply disappeared." "The bodies are never found," Martinez paused. "Until now." They pulled into the parking lot of a small motel on the outskirts of town. Martinez led Rebecca to a room where 2 other detectives were waiting. Detective Brown, a heavy-set man with kind eyes, and Detective Kim, a sharp-faced woman who looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Rebecca, we need to ask you some difficult questions," Detective Brown said gently. "Everything you can remember about your interactions with Hendricks might help us build a case against him." For the next 2 hours, Rebecca recounted every conversation, every gesture. Every time Hendricks had been helpful or seemed to know more about her life than she had told him. The detectives took notes, occasionally exchanging glances when she mentioned something particularly significant. "He knew I worked late on Thursdays," Rebecca realized as she spoke. "I never told him that, but he always seemed to be working in his yard when I got home those nights, like he was waiting to see what time I arrived." Detective Kim leaned forward. "Did he ever ask about your family? Friends who might visit?" "He asked if I had children, if my parents lived nearby, whether I was close to my siblings. I thought he was just being neighborly, but ... Rebecca's voice trailed off as she understood the implications. "He was making sure I was isolated. That's his preference," Martinez confirmed. "Women with strong support networks are harder to make disappear without questions being asked." Detective Brown's phone buzzed, and he stepped outside to take the call. When he returned, his expression was grim. The search team found something in Hendricks' basement. 3 more teeth, and what appears to be a makeshift surgical suite. He looked at Rebecca. "We also found a detailed journal documenting his observations of you over the past 6 months. He'd been planning to make his move this weekend." Rebecca felt sick. If she hadn't found that tooth in her garden, if she hadn't called the police, she would have become another entry in his journal. Another woman who simply vanished without a trace. "There's something else," Detective Brown continued. "Hendricks is gone. His car is missing, and it looks like he cleared out in a hurry after you escaped. We have a PBS out, but he had a significant head start." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Hendricks was still out there, and now he knew the police were onto him. He would be more dangerous than ever. What happens now? Rebecca asked. Martinez looked at her colleagues before answering. "Now we wait, and we use you as bait." Rebecca's heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "Hendricks is obsessed with you. He's been planning this for months, and psychopaths like him don't handle failure well. He'll try to finish what he started, especially now that you've seen his true nature." Detective Kim's voice was clinical, but Rebecca could see the concern in her eyes. "The question is whether we can catch him before he succeeds." Rebecca looked around the motel room, with its stained carpet and flickering fluorescent lights, and realized this wasn't a safe house. It was a trap, and she was the bait. Outside, storm clouds were gathering, and Rebecca couldn't shake the feeling that Hendricks was out there somewhere, watching and waiting for his next opportunity to finish the job he had started. Rebecca couldn't sleep in the motel room, knowing she was being used as bait to catch a serial killer. Every sound in the hallway made her jump. Every shadow outside the window could be Hendricks coming to finish what he'd started. Detective Martinez had stationed herself in the adjoining room, with other officers positioned throughout the motel, but Rebecca felt more exposed than protected. She kept thinking about Hendricks' journal, about how thoroughly he had studied her habits and vulnerabilities. If he could plan for 6 months without her noticing, what was to stop him from outsmarting the police now? At 3 in the morning, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Rebecca's heart raced as she read the message. "Did you really think a cheap motel would keep you safe from me?" She immediately called Martinez, who burst into the room with her weapon drawn. Other officers followed, sweeping the area and checking the perimeter, but they found nothing. "He's playing with us," Martinez said, frustration evident in her voice. "He wants us to know he can reach you whenever he wants." Another text arrived. "I have something that belongs to you, Rebecca. Check your email." With trembling hands, Rebecca opened her laptop and accessed her email account. There was a new message with a video attachment. Against Martinez's advice, she clicked play. The video showed the interior of her house, but it wasn't recent footage. Hendricks had been inside her home multiple times over the past months, filming himself as he went through her personal belongings. He held up items from her bedroom, her bathroom, her kitchen, speaking directly to the camera as if Rebecca were watching. "You see, Rebecca, I know everything about you. Your favorite coffee mug, the book you read before bed, the way you fold your towels. I've been more intimate with your life than any man you've ever dated." The video continued with Hendricks describing her daily routines in disturbing detail, showing that he had been inside her house regularly, probably using keys he'd had made months ago. But the most chilling part came at the end, when he held up a photograph. It was a picture of Rebecca's sister Sarah and her 2 young children, taken outside their elementary school in Phoenix. "Family is so important, isn't it, Rebecca? I'd hate for your investigation to put innocent people at risk." Rebecca's blood ran cold. Sarah didn't even know about the situation with Hendricks. Rebecca had been planning to call her once everything was resolved. But somehow, he had already identified her family and was threatening them. Martinez immediately contacted Phoenix police to provide protection for Rebecca's sister and her children. But Rebecca knew that wouldn't be enough. Hendricks had been planning this for years, and he clearly had resources and connections they didn't fully understand. "We need to end this," Rebecca said. "He's not going to stop, and now he's threatening my family. What do you need me to do?" Detective Brown arrived with news from the investigation team. "We've been analyzing Hendricks' house and found something interesting. He's not working alone. There are communications with at least 2 other individuals, and evidence suggests this is part of a larger network." "What kind of network?" "We think it's a group of men who share information about potential victims, help each other avoid detection, maybe even trade victims between different locations." Brown's expression was grim. "Hendricks isn't just a serial killer. He's part of an organized predator network that's been operating for years." Rebecca felt overwhelmed by the scope of what they were dealing with. It wasn't just one twisted individual. It was an entire system of predators who helped each other hunt and kill women. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from a number she recognized, her home phone. "Answer it," Martinez said, nodding to the tech team who were ready to trace the call. Rebecca picked up the phone with shaking hands. "Hello?" "Rebecca, You've caused quite a stir with your little discovery." Hendrik's voice was calm and conversational, as if they were discussing the weather. "I'm calling from your kitchen, by the way. I made myself some coffee using your favorite mug. I hope you don't mind. What do you want?" "I want to finish our conversation, the one we started before you so rudely jumped out your window. I have a proposition for you." Martinez was gesturing frantically for her to keep him talking while the trace ran. "What kind of proposition?" "It's simple, really. You come home alone, and we complete what we started. In exchange, your sister and her children remain safe, and this whole unpleasant business ends quietly." Rebecca looked at Martinez, who was shaking her head emphatically. "And if I refuse?" "Then I'm afraid Sarah and the children become part of my collection instead. Did you know little Emma walks to school alone every morning? Such a trusting child, just like her aunt." Rebecca's hands clenched into fists. The idea of this monster anywhere near her niece and nephew made her physically ill. "How do I know you'll keep your word?" "You don't, but you know what I'm capable of, and you know I always finish what I start. The only variable is whether it ends with you or extends to your entire family." The tech team signaled that they had traced the call, but it was coming from Rebecca's house, which they already knew was empty. Hendricks was using her landline, but probably wasn't actually there. "I need time to think," Rebecca said. "You have 1 hour. Come home alone, or I start with the children." The line went dead. Martinez immediately got on her radio, coordinating with Phoenix police to increase protection on Rebecca's family. But Rebecca knew it wouldn't matter. If this network was as sophisticated as they suspected, Hendricks had people everywhere, and no police protection would be enough to stop them permanently. "We can't let you go back to that house," Martinez said. "It's obviously a trap. He'll kill my family if I don't. Maybe. But he'll definitely kill you if you do. And then probably kill your family anyway. That's how these predators work. They lie to get what they want." Rebecca stared out the motel window at the approaching dawn, knowing she was facing an impossible choice. Go home and almost certainly die, or stay away and risk her sister's family being murdered by a network of killers who had been perfecting their methods for years. Either way, Hendricks won. That was the terrifying truth about evil people. They didn't play by the same rules as everyone else, and they were willing to go further than good people could imagine. The clock on the motel nightstand showed 53 minutes remaining. Rebecca made her decision with 30 minutes left on Hendricks' deadline. She couldn't live with herself if something happened to Sarah's children, and she couldn't trust that the police could protect them from a network of organized killers. She waited until Martinez went to coordinate with the Phoenix team, then slipped out of the motel room through the bathroom window. It was a technique Hendricks himself had taught her the night before, though he hadn't intended it as a lesson in escape. The drive back to Maple Grove felt like driving toward her own execution, but Rebecca had a plan. She couldn't beat Hendricks at his own game, but she didn't have to. She just had to survive long enough for the police to trace her location and arrive with backup. Her house looked exactly the same as when she'd left it, but Rebecca knew Hendricks was somewhere nearby, watching her approach. She had left her phone with Martinez, but tucked inside her jacket was a small recording device the police had given her months ago for a different case. If she didn't survive this, at least there would be evidence of what happened. Rebecca unlocked her front door and stepped inside. The house felt different, violated in a way that went beyond the physical intrusion. This had been her sanctuary, her fresh start, and Hendricks had corrupted it with his presence. "I'm here," she called out. "I know you are. I've been watching you since you left the motel." Hendricks' voice came from her living room, calm and satisfied. "I must admit, I'm impressed you came alone. Most people aren't capable of that kind of sacrifice." Rebecca found him sitting in her favorite chair, looking perfectly at home. He was older than she had realized, probably in his 60s, with the kind of ordinary appearance that helped him blend into any suburban neighborhood. Nothing about him screamed killer, which was exactly what made him so dangerous. "Let's get this over with," Rebecca said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "Oh, but we're not in a hurry, are we? I've been planning this conversation for months." Hendricks smiled, and Rebecca saw the predator beneath the neighborly facade. "Sit down, please." Rebecca remained standing. "I came here like you asked. Now you have to keep your promise about my family, of course." "A deal is a deal." Hendricks pulled out his phone and sent a quick text. "There, I've called off my associate in Phoenix. Your sister and her children are safe. How do I know you're telling the truth?" "You don't, but that's the thing about trust, isn't it? Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith." His smile widened. "Just like all my other friends did." "Your other victims, you mean?" "I prefer to think of them as friends. Each one taught me something valuable about human nature, about the beautiful simplicity of fear." Hendricks leaned forward slightly. "But you're different, Rebecca. You're stronger than the others, more resilient. That's why I saved you for last." Rebecca felt a chill as she realized what he meant. "You're planning to stop after me. Retire, you might say. Find a nice quiet place to live out my remaining years, surrounded by my memories." He gestured around the room. "I've collected quite a few over the decades." "Decades? How long have you been doing this?" "Since I was 23. 42 years of perfecting my craft, learning what makes people tick, what breaks them." Hendricks' voice carried a perverse pride. "I've become quite good at reading people, predicting their choices. For instance, I knew you would come here tonight, despite the obvious danger. Because you threatened my family. No, Rebecca, because you're a fixer. You see broken things and you try to heal them. It's why you became a dental hygienist, why you stayed in your marriage too long, why you moved to this neighborhood thinking you could start fresh." He paused. "And it's why you think you can somehow save those other women by sacrificing yourself." Rebecca realized with growing horror that he was right. Part of her had hoped that by facing him, she could somehow get information about his other victims, maybe bring closure to their families. You can't fix everyone, Rebecca. Some people are beyond repair. Like you? Oh, I'm not broken. I'm evolved. I've moved beyond the petty moralities that constrain ordinary people. Hendrik stood up slowly. But our time together is almost over. The police will be here soon. I'm sure you left some way for them to track you. Rebecca's hand moved instinctively toward the recording device in her jacket. Looking for this? Hendricks held up the small recorder. I found it when you sat down. Did you really think I wouldn't check? Her heart sank. Without the recording, there would be no evidence of his confession, no way to connect him to the other murders. Don't look so disappointed. I'm going to tell you something that should make you feel better. Hendricks moved closer, and Rebecca could smell his cologne, the same scent she had noticed during their friendly conversations over the fence. You did save your family. And more than that, you saved future victims. What do you mean? I mean that you forced me into retirement earlier than planned. After tonight, I'll disappear, find a new identity, live quietly somewhere far away. No more hunting, no more killing. He smiled. You broke the pattern, Rebecca. Just not in the way you expected. Outside, Rebecca could hear sirens approaching. Hendricks heard them too, but he didn't seem concerned. They'll be too late, of course. But they will find evidence linking me to at least 8 murders hidden in my basement where you'll never think to look. Your death will finally give those families the closure they deserve. Rebecca backed toward the door, but Hendricks was faster. He grabbed her arm with surprising strength. Thank you, Rebecca, for being exactly who I thought you were. A fixer who couldn't resist trying to save everyone, even me. The sirens were getting louder, but Rebecca knew Martinez and her team were still minutes away. She thought about Sarah's children, about the 8 women whose families deserved justice, about all the future victims who would be spared if Hendricks was caught. Then she did something Hendricks hadn't predicted in all his careful planning. Instead of trying to fight or flee, Rebecca grabbed his wrist and bit down as hard as she could, tearing flesh and drawing blood. Hendricks screamed and released her, stumbling backward. But Rebecca wasn't trying to escape. She was collecting evidence. His blood was now under her fingernails and in her mouth, DNA that could link him definitively to his crimes. The front door burst open as Martinez and her team stormed in, weapons drawn. They found Rebecca on the floor, bloodied but alive, and Hendricks trying to bandage his wounded wrist. William Hendricks, you're under arrest for the murders of ... Martinez began reading the charges as other officers secured the scene. Later, as paramedics treated Rebecca's injuries, Martinez sat beside her in the ambulance. The basement search turned up evidence from at least 12 victims, not 8. You helped us solve cases going back 15 years. Rebecca looked back at her house, knowing she would never live there again. But for the first time in months, she felt something like peace. The evil that had been walking among them daily, hiding behind a friendly smile and helpful gestures, had finally been exposed. What happens now? Rebecca asked. Now we make sure he never hurts anyone again. And we help you find somewhere truly safe to start over. Martinez squeezed her hand. You did something incredibly brave tonight. Rebecca thought about all the ordinary people in ordinary neighborhoods who had no idea what kinds of monsters might be living next door. The terrifying truth was that evil people did walk among them daily, hidden behind normal faces and normal lives. But the other truth, the one that mattered more, was that good people were willing to fight back, even when it meant risking everything. As the ambulance drove away from Maple Grove, Rebecca made a decision. She would testify at Hendrick's trial, help put him away forever, and then dedicate her life to teaching others how to recognize the signs she had missed. Because the best defense against monsters was knowing they existed and being prepared to face them. The evil would always be there, hiding in plain sight. But so would the people brave enough to shine a light on it. If this psychological thriller left you questioning everyone in your own neighborhood, don't forget to subscribe for more chilling stories that expose the hidden dangers of everyday life. Share this story with friends and family. You never know who might need to hear these warning signs. Comment below if you've ever had that unsettling feeling about someone in your community, and remember, trust your instincts. They might save your life. Hit that notification bell because your safety could depend on recognizing these red flags before it's too late.